Shalom, shalom, Israel. Today we're going to go over usury or Neshek. That is what the word for usury is. It's Neshek. It's another word for usury too. It's masha as well. But today we're going to go over a few verses and a few things about this and why Neshek is important not to charge Neshek, charge your brother with Neshek. All right, interest. So we're going to start off in Exodus, and then we're going to go over what the law says, the book of the law, and then we're going to go over some of the examples and see what the prophets say. Then we'll go and see what Solomon and Dawood said in Proverbs and Psalms, and then we'll go into the history of what some of the ways that Neshek has destroyed. Why Neshek was seen as so bad, and when Neshek became back to be inside of the Christian church. All right, so that's what we're going to do. So we're going to start off with Exodus 22 and 5. All right, and then we're going to go to Leviticus, then Deuteronomy, and then we'll go from there. So Exodus 22 and 5 says, "If thou lend money to any of my people that is poor by thee, thou shalt not be to him as a usurer, neither shalt thou lay upon him usury." Right? And that word is nasha, is usurer. And so nasha is usurer. And when you click on usury, it's neshek. So that's where we get neshek from. It says interest on a debt. And nasha, it says to lend, borrow, or security, or interest. So when I see that, I think about stock markets, bonds, and all that type of stuff, etc. All right. So we have another witness here in Leviticus. So we're not to be charging our brothers interest or a neshek. Okay, Leviticus 25 and 36 says, "Take thou no neshek of him or increase, but fear thy Elohim, that thy brother may live with thee." Now this right here, like it says, take no. It's this al. Take nothing. So nothing, all right? No interest or debt of him, or increase, right? That's tabeth. That means multiplication. That is percentage or bonus in addition to principal. It is considered an unjust gain, all right? So you cannot, increase yourself off of lending to your brother. That is wicked, okay? Then you go down to verse 37, same one, Leviticus 25 and 37. "Thou shalt not give him thy money upon usury." It gets more specific. "Thou shalt not give him thy money," kasef, silver, right? "Thou shalt not give him thy silver upon neshek, nor lend to him thy victuals for increase." So even food, what are victuals? Okel, food, eating, meal, right? For increase, for marbeth, multitude, increase on capital, right? So you cannot do that for your brother. You can't even charge him interest on food. You can't be like, well, I fed you and I did this and that, so you should do this and that for me, or you should do this and that, etc. It should be out of the love of your heart. It shouldn't be for that. It should be for the love of your brother or your sister, okay? Because anything else would be an increase. It'll be an increase. Now there are some ways where you can give unto and expect something increase back. For instance, we don't have if we were back in our times and we had camels still, we were messing with camels, then you could give an adult camel and get younger camels back, some baby camels back, because this is not an increase. It's not neshek. Okay. All right. So read that again. "Thou shalt not give him thy money upon neshek, nor lend thy okel upon marbeth for an increase." So you don't give your money, you don't give food, and you don't charge interest on those things, and or increase yourself or multiply yourself with those things. Okay. So next we're gonna go to Deuteronomy, right? For the third witness. So we get to Exodus, that's one witness. We went to Leviticus, That's two second witness, and we're going to go to the third witness. And why do we have 2 or 3 witnesses? Because Deuteronomy 19 and 15, and I'm going to show y'all real quick. It says right here, one witness shall not rise up against a man for any iniquity or for any sin. In any sin that he sinneth, at the mouth of 2 witnesses or at the mouth of 3 witnesses shall the matter be established. All right. So once you have 2 or 3 witnesses, of the prophets or in the Torah, then you have established your matter. It's clear cut, said and done. Okay. So we're going to go to Deuteronomy 23 and 19. Thou shalt not lend upon Neshek to thy brother, Neshek of money, Neshek of victuals, Neshek of anything that is lent upon Neshek. So that right there pretty much knocks out any and everything, right? He just broke it down for you. Food, money, or anything that is lent upon interest or multiplication or increase. You cannot charge that, no matter what it is. No matter what it is, you just can't do it. Verse 20. Unto a stranger thou mayest lend upon Neshek, but unto thy brother thou shalt not lend upon Neshek, that the Lord thy God may bless thee in all that thou settest thy hand to do in the land, whether thou goest to possess it. Right? So that was one of the things that he said that we shall do. We should not charge Neshek to one another. Right? So now let's go into see what the prophet said. We have a few prophets that spoke about it, because that was some of the sins that our forefathers were doing. They were charging Neshek against one another. All right? And we go to see this here in Ezekiel. Let's see here. Ezekiel, the 18th chapter, 13th verse. Ezekiel had to remind them again. He said, this is what he says. He goes on to talk about the spoiling the needy, and not restore the pledge, and not lifting up the eyes to their eyes to the idols, and committed abomination. He goes on to say that hath given forth upon Neshek, and have taken increase, Terbeth. So not only did they do Neshek, they also took Terbeth. Shall he then live? So it was so important that Most High was going to slaughter people for taking Neshek and Terbeth against their brother, because you're profiting off your brother. You're essentially making your brother a slave, taking an unjust gain. And the Most High looks down upon that. That's why it is Torah law that you shall not charge Neshek or Terbeth against your brother. And then he goes on to say the rest of the verse. He shall not live. He answers his own question. Have given forth upon Neshek, and have taken Terbeth. Shall he then live? He shall not live. He hath done all these abominations. So it goes on to further. Ezekiel, the prophet, calls it an abomination. Okay? So he shall surely die. Not only are you going to die, you're going to surely die. His blood shall be upon him. So this is why you cannot charge Neshek. You cannot do any of these things, because it is important. I would say it's important. Right? So, and further up, he goes on to say, he hath not given forth upon Neshek, neither hath he taken any increase, that hath withdrawn his hand from iniquity, hath executed true judgment between man and man, right? Hath walked in my statutes, and have kept my judgment to deal truly. He is just, and he shall surely live, said the Most High. So, right above that, like I said, Ezekiel 18 and 8 is where it actually starts off, where he talks about a person who does not charge Neshek shall live. And then you go down to verse 13, he tells you that a person who does charge Neshek and Terbeth will surely die. Okay? So how many of you Israelites out here charging Neshek and Terbeth to your brother and sister? I know that this wicked land that we're in says that it's okay to charge Neshek and Terbeth, but it's not. Thus saith the Most High. Okay? This is why it's important to get into this Torah and get into these laws, and to break it down and to see exactly what's going on, because A lot of this law is not being talked about. Okay, all praises to the Most High for bringing out this truth and giving me the discernment. Okay, now let's go and see what some other prophets had to say. Let's see what Nehemiah had to say about it, because Nehemiah was part of the group that came back from Babylon, right? He was part of Zechariah, Haggai, and Zephaniah, and all them. Where is he at? Oh, there he is. They all came back then. So we're going to go to Nehemiah chapter 5, right? And we're going to read verse 7. Right? And the context of this right here was when they're coming back, and you can read on up to get the context of that. And they were crying to the Most High. And matter of fact, let's go ahead and get that. Start from verse 1. It says, "And there was a great cry of the people and of their wives against the brethren the Jews. For there were that said, We are sons, and our daughters are many. Therefore we take up corn for them, that we may eat and live. Some also there were that said, We have mortgaged our lands, vineyards, and houses, that we may buy corn because of the dearth. There were also that said, We have borrowed money for the king's tribute, and that upon our lands and vineyards. Yet now our flesh is as the flesh of our brethren, our children as their children, and we bring into bondage our sons and our daughters to be servants, and some of our daughters are brought unto bondage already. Neither is it in our power to redeem them, for other men have our lands and vineyards." And Nehemiah said, and he was very angry when he heard their cry and these words. "And I consulted with myself, and I rebuked the nobles, and the rulers, and said to them, Ye exact Neshek." Right? He says, "Ye Nashah Neshek, every one of his brother. And I set a great assembly against them. And I said unto them, We are after our ability have redeemed our brethren the Jews, which were sold unto the heathen. And will you even sell your brethren, or shall they be sold unto us?" Then held they their peace and found nothing to answer. So Nehemiah told them, he rebuked the nobles and said, "Why do you exact Neshek from your brother?" Okay? Now go down to verse 10. He says, "I likewise and my brethren and my servants might exact of them money and corn, and I pray you, let us leave off of this Neshek." So he asked them and told the nobles, stop charging Neshek. Stop it. Okay? Now we're gonna go to Jeremiah. You know, the weeping prophet. We're gonna go to Jeremiah and read Jeremiah chapter 15, verse 10. "Woe is me, my mother, that thou hast borne me a man of strife, and a man of contention to the whole earth. I have neither lent on Neshek, nor men have lent to me on Neshek. Yet every one of them do curse me." Now we're gonna go back to back to Ezekiel. We're gonna go to Ezekiel 22, verse 12. "In thee have they taken gifts to shed blood, that have taken Neshek and Tarbath, and thou hast greedily gained of thy neighbors by extortion, and hast forgotten me, said the Most High thy God." So the Most High says when you take Neshek, he's akin to that to extortion. He says that's greedily gained, an increase, tarbeth, multiplied. You are greedily multiplying by extortion when you charge your brother Neshek. You're keeping him poor deliberately. You become the oppressor. That is oppressing your brother, charging Neshek or Tarbeth, increasing yourself. Okay? Now I'm going to go back to Ezekiel 18 and read this again, just so you can see again to emphasize this, how important it is, and why Jeremiah said that neither have I lent on Neshek, and neither have anything been lent to me on Neshek. That is Ezekiel 18 and 17. That hath taken off his hand from the poor, that hath not received Neshek, nor Tarbeth, hath executed my judgments, hath walked in my statutes, he shall not die for the iniquity of his father. He shall surely live. And that goes to show that, it's more than just the law that you have to look at and understand. It's also the judgments and his statutes as well. Okay? So, now, we shall go into Psalms. Psalms 15 and 5. He that putteth not out his money to Neshek, nor taketh reward against the innocent, he that doeth these things shall never be moved. We're going to go to Proverbs 28 and 8. Proverbs 28 and 8. And let's see here. Was it 22 and 8? Let me see. I might got it wrong. No, 28 and 8. I'm sorry. Proverbs 28 and 8. He that turneth away his ear from hearing the law. And what is that law? Torah. And what does it say, Torah? What does it say for the law? A precept or a statute. For all those that keep talking about precept upon precept, line upon line, you need to read Isaiah 28 and 10 through verse 19. All right, but that's for another video. He that turned away his ear from hearing the Torah, even his prayer shall be an abomination. Right? So everybody knows that verse, but what about the verse before it? He that by Neshek and unjust gain increaseth his substance, he shall gather it for him that will pity the poor. He that by Neshek and unjust gain increaseth his substance, he shall gather it for him that will pity the poor. That's how much the Most High hates Neshek. Because he will take all your gains from Neshek and give it to a righteous man who gives to the poor. Because when you give to the poor, you give unto the Most High. Okay? When you give to the poor, you give unto the Most High. Let me see here. And let me see here. And we can get that. You can go back to Psalms 15. And let's see here. Actually, you can go to Psalms 37 is where it's at. Psalms 37 and 21. And you can get that and see about giving to the poor. And this is for the people who like to borrow and don't pay back. So for all you that have that attribute that are watching this video, they're saying, yes, brother, you can't charge me Neshek. It's against the Torah law. The Most High also says you wicked if you borrow and don't pay back as well. Psalms 37 and 21. The wicked borroweth and payeth not again, but the righteous show mercy and giveth. We're going to go to Psalms 111, 112 and 5. A good man showeth favor and lendeth. He will guide his affairs with discretion. Did it say that a good man will do Neshek? No. Oh, no. Proverbs 19:17. He that pity upon the poor lendeth unto the Lord, and that which he have given he will pay him again. So see, the Most High don't see nothing wrong with lending. He just sees something wrong with Neshek and Terbeth. He sees something with you getting unjust gain off of lending, okay? But when you lend to the poor, you lend to the Most High, right? Like I said earlier, I just provided the verse for you, Proverbs 19 and 17, okay? And if for you who do charge Neshek, he will take that Neshek and he will give it to a righteous man that does Proverbs 19 and 17, that hath pity upon the poor and that lendeth, okay? So, now let's go into the history of Neshek, usury. So earlier I told you that it was two words for interest or lending or interest, and that is masha. As you can see, masha, lending or interest, and then there is the word that you have been hearing me say, neshek. As you can see, neshek, interest or usury. Okay. So, just 1 second for me. All right. So, as you can see, Neshek, interest or usury, right? So we're going to go into some of the history. And my computer is starting to trip a little bit. Right? And so Neshek, the Muslims call it riba. And they do not charge riba. They do not charge riba. And they know that it was a sin. And so they don't charge it at all. Okay? But the early Christian church, they did not charge Neshek. They had prohibited Neshek, and they were adamant about that all the way up into the 13th century. Okay, now this is a little bit of history on Neshek, the transition of Neshek. All right, so it says here, during the lifetime of Aristotle, which is 384 to 322 BC, the lending of money for profit was believed to be unnatural and dishonorable. Aristotle and his beliefs of usury, Neshek, provided a foundation of ideas for future perspectives on the practice. This negative connotation associated with usury or Neshek continued in history, as is evident in the development and spread of Christianity and Islam during the Middle Ages. The Christian church drew on biblical passages and moral and religious reasons to define Neshek or usury as a sin. The church placed a ban on the practice of usury to prevent this evil. In Islam, the Quran and the teachings of the Prophet Muhammad led Muslims to also view usury, or riba, as they call it, as a crime. As the world developed, Neshek or usury has lost its negative connotation in the West and has become a social norm. The Christian church has lifted its ban on Neshek, while a gradual decrease of the importance of religion is seen. Long distance trade has developed, which also contributes to the increasing emergence of Neshek. The expanse of trade has led to more people being involved in the market and the augmentation of new ideas on Neshek. The rise of capitalism too has affected society's views on Neshek. Capitalism does occur in the making of self-profit as well as rates of interest. Both of these would have been looked down upon in Aristotle's time in the Middle Ages. In the present, however, the West has grown accustomed to capitalism. Interest rates do not carry any negative connotation, and Neshek is no longer considered a sin. All right? It says the debate on Neshek has witnessed countless arguments over the past 2 millenniums and will continue to perceive them due to varying opinions in the religious passages in the Bible and Quran, right? So, that was just a little bit of brief history on Neshek and in the church, right? So, when did the 13th century, and it had with Luther, right? Luther and them changed. You had the Reformation and everything, and they kind of loosened up the rules and everything for Neshek. And it goes right here. It says Luther wrote, "Only when their actions violate the do unto others principle, that is, only if they do not want to be treated this way in return by others. This reciprocity meant merchants and wealthy families were allowed to charge each other interest. Luther asked Christians to offer the needy charity rather than loans, but he still accepted interest rates under 5%. All right, so this is kind of when it started to come back into Christianity and back into the church, and then you had the rise of capitalism, and which totally took it and ran with it. Okay. Here you have some information here about usury and how it affects redistribution of wealth, and how Neshek does that. How Neshek is an exploitation of the needy. Let's go ahead and read that. It says the condemnation of Neshek in the form of charging for loans to the poor and destitute is a recurring theme in several traditions. This is clearly the contextual meaning of the Judaic biblical passages in Exodus and Leviticus. And Rustin suggests that the original target of the medieval Neshek laws was the medieval equivalent of the loan shark. But that medieval theory was unsatisfactory because it could not distinguish the helpful loan from the oppressive. Sir Said, schooled in Islam, similarly interprets riba as the primitive form of money lending when money was advanced for consumptual purposes. In the Indian tradition, the understanding of Neshek can also be found as is evident from the 20th century quote. It is Neshek that ranketh the most extortionate, most merciless Neshek, which eats the marrow out of the bones of the cultivators and condemns him to a life of penury and slavery. Okay, so this is just some of the things that happened, why they were saying, some of the results of Neshek or usury. And you see it now in modern day times when you take out loans, when you buy cars, when you buy a house, all the quote unquote interest on things is keeping you poor. Okay. Now it says here, Neshek is a mechanism of inequitable redistribution of wealth. The observation that Neshek acts as a mechanism by which the rich get richer and the poor get poorer is common to several traditions. Islam rejects financial interest on the basis that it contradicts the principle of distributive equity, which its political economy strives to enshrine. Interest in any amount acts in transferring wealth from the assetless section of the population. Coming from a totally different perspective as a self-declared individualist, Bernie reaches a similar conclusion. Interest, by making capital a quasi-monopoly, effectually prevents the establishment of a true competitive system. Kennedy provides some excellent empirical evidence of this phenomenon, which relates to Germany, and he wrote this in 1982. She shows that while the poorest 2.5 million households paid out 1.8 billion in interest, the richest 2.5 million households received 34.2 billion. She even goes on to suggest that this covert redistribution mechanism totally works against the constitutional rights of the individual in most countries, given that the money is a government service to which the public should have equal access. The psychological effect of this on the relatively poor can be seen to be magnified when the merely quantitative evaluation of transfers from poor to rich is superseded by consideration of the qualitative cost of such a wealth transfer. For the relatively rich, the utility gain provided by Neshek is marginal to the already substantial utility of the principal sum. The principle of the diminishing marginal utility of wealth therefore applies to each incremental unit of wealth procured by interest earnings. The poor, however, experience the converse of this. For them, the loss of utility incurred by having to pay interest on qualitatively much greater than the gain to the rich. Each unit of interest paid incurs increasing marginal utility loss. Permitting Neshek to operate in an economy therefore reduces overall utility of the economy. This must count as one of the strongest arguments against Neshek. Any justification of it is, as an efficient economic instrument would have to first demonstrate that it functions to increase total utility. Hold on a second, y'all. In the absence of such demonstrations, it can justifiably be condemned as a tool of tyranny. So they knew all this time that that the rich was going to get rich off of the interest and off of the loans that capitalism brings. Okay, this is one of the reasons why we did not charge Neshek in our land, in our country, against one another, because you are essentially making your brother a slave to you, and you are getting unjust gain off of him. Okay, so now that they have instituted Neshek back into Christianity, and the years went by, and you got into the what they call the 19th century, the 1900s, and oil is found. So at that time, you had Pax Britannica, which was starting to fall and wane, which was actually waning. And you had Pax Americana, which had actually just started back on the scene. After World War One, America became the global superpower, the emerging global superpower of Pax Americana. Now, they made a deal with the Saudis to build their oil rigs, and pull the oil out of the ground, but they must sell their oil in U.S. dollars. So they had this big old meeting called the Bretton Woods, and this was actually after World War II. Okay, after the World War II, when all the oil was found in Saudi Arabia. Saudi Arabia agreed, but on condition that they backed the U.S. dollar by gold. And they did. So we're going to read here what this Bretton Woods system, because they all met in a place called Bretton Woods. So let's see what the Bretton Woods was. The Bretton Woods system of monetary management establishes the rules for commercial relations between the United States, Canada, Western European countries, and Australia, among 44 other countries. After 1944 Bretton Woods Agreement, the Bretton Woods system was the first example of a fully negotiated monetary order intended to govern monetary relations among independent states. The Bretton Woods system required countries to guarantee convertibility of their currencies into U.S. dollar to within 1% of fixed parity rates, with the dollar convertible to gold bullion for foreign governments and central banks at $35 per ounce of gold. So $1 was $35. $1 was worth 1 ounce of gold, which was 1 ounce of gold. $35 per troy ounce of gold. I'm sorry, $35 per ounce of gold. It also envisioned greater cooperation among countries in order to prevent future competitive devaluations, and thus established the IMF. Sounds familiar? International Monetary Fund to monitor exchange rates and lend reserve currencies to nations with balance of payments deficits. Neshek. So they established a system right here to charge Neshek to nations. Okay? So then you had something to come along because one day on a Friday, I think it was August the 15th, 1971, England came over and they said to Nixon, we want the gold. We want our gold back. We need all of our gold back. Nixon knew that there was a problem because they didn't have everybody's gold, because everybody was storing their gold in the United States because of the Bretton Woods system, and they were they thought that their gold was safe and that their the dollar, they could always transfer their U.S. dollars for gold at any time. So Nixon knew that this was going to be a problem. So England came up, knocked on the door of their ships, and was like, give us the gold. The United States gave England their gold. But they knew that Monday morning comes, Saudi Arabia, Qatar, and all the oil producing states and all the rest of the countries were going to be knocking at that door with their hand out, wanting their gold. So Nixon did what he thought was best, or what, or devised a plan, should I say. He went to Camp David, retired to Camp David, and shut the banks down. Said the banks won't open on Monday. We're going to have a bank holiday. And when the banks opened up again, he emerged and he said, we are no longer going on the gold standard. A dollar would not be backed by gold any longer. And this caused a big fuss across the world. But what are you going to do? Because America is the superpower. You want to go to fight with America? No. So everybody pretty much had to stomp their feet, clap their hands, and just be mad. All right? So that leads us up to now, up today, right? Because America became the global superpower, Pax Americana, through the oil dollar, the petrodollar, and through taking the dollar off of the gold standard and being able to print money and charge Neshek at whatever rate that they want to. Backed by the IMF, who is also using US dollars, printed dollars, to give out loans on Neshek to countries. So this whole entire system is wrong. So this is why it's important for you not to charge Neshek to your brother. Right? That's what it said in the Torah. You shall not charge Neshek to thy brother. And we'll get that again before we head out. Deuteronomy 23 and 20. And 19. Thou shalt not lend upon Neshek to thy brother. Neshek of money, and Neshek of food, Neshek of anything that is lent upon Neshek. I hope you guys enjoyed this lesson in Israel, and leave a comment. Let me know what you guys think, and subscribe to the channel if you like the information and you like the video. All right. This is Brother Araya. To the next video. Shalom, shalom.